Hello, I'm Nancy Araki. I'm a Sansei born in San Francisco. When the war started, my family moved from Mendocino County to join all the other family members at Esparto, California. And from there, we all went into Merced Assembly Center and then got shipped off to Amachi, Colorado. And we, because circumstances, we left the camp rather early to then go to Utah. But from Utah, with vigilante activities and all, it was safer that our family then went back into another camp, which is Topaz, Utah.
Hello, I'm Richard Murakami. I was born in Florida, California, which is 7 miles from Sacramento. I was born on my grandparents' grape farm. My father believed that the whole family should be together, so he took his brother and 3 sisters, and we all moved to Florida, except for his older sister. His older sister did not go with us because my uncle got picked up by the FBI in December 7th, or I think December 8th or 9th anyway. So she didn't want to leave because she said that if she left, my uncle would not know where they are. So all of our families, we moved to Florida and lived near my uncle's house. And from there, we were sent to Marysville, the Assembly Center, and then at Tule Lake. And then after the so-called loyalty questionnaire, we went to Jerome. And then from Jerome, we went to Hard Mountain. Mm.
I remember a little bit of Amachi. I started kindergarten there. And so there's some remembrances of the school being on the hilltop. And then other than that, I remember when we did leave the camps on the Greyhound bus. And then I remember living in Spanish Fork, Utah area, and that's where I then started first grade, and how scary that was because, there were no other Japanese around there, and having to take the school bus on my own and all. And I remember that, but more frighteningly was the vigilante activity that eventually occurred with people driving by and throwing bricks. And in that, the bricks, the window was shattered, and actually I was sleeping right by the window, but my mother had used a monk's cloth as a curtain, so that kind of prevented any real bad injury or anything. And from that, my father, reporting it to the authorities and all, but ultimately with the young family, it was just decided it'd be better to go back into the camp. So we did that. One of the strongest feelings as a child was, and I remember asking my parents and my grandmother, why are so many big people crying? I mean, I remember that vividly. And so they would try to explain as best they can all the various things. And so that was a real troublesome thing to me. I knew adults cried because I had gone through a funeral of my grandfather. But now, just walking by the barracks and hearing this was rather disturbing.
Once somebody asked me at an event about life in camp for me as a 10-year-old, and I told him I had fun in camp. And I told him the reason I had fun in camp is because my parents tried to keep life as normal as possible for us while we're there. They didn't complain about anything. They didn't say woe is us or things like that. So that's why I wore this shirt, come on shirt. Because they had to come on, not me. They had to come on.
My dad, whenever he'd come back, and he was a really kind of a really social organizer, I guess. And so he would get all the kids out the block and we'd all go out into the desert area, and he would, you know, create activities like having like a junior Olympics, or having, you know, hunting for arrowheads or whatever, that kind of thing. And I remember one time we were out there when all of a sudden one of the famous topaz dust storms occurred. And so he kind of herded all of us, and then we all were supposed to walk straight forward. And I remember just kind of trudging with my head down. And what was so incredible was that I thought, oh my gosh, how could this side of my face hurt so badly with all the sand? And this side, there's no, you know, it was a normal feeling. And that type of, you know, experience kind of remains with you.
My brother said, took my mother to Oregon to visit some old family friends. On the way back, they decided to stop at Tootie Lake. And my brother said, as soon as they saw the side of Tootie Lake, my mother started to cry.
Yeah.
And she would not stop crying until he left. He said he decided to leave right away. And so then, and I didn't know that until 2016. They went in 1972. My brother did not tell me until 2016. So 71 years later, after leaving camp, I found out that, you know, my mother really had suffered. And we never discussed camp in our family. There was only one time when my niece interviewed us, but I forgot what it was about. My mother didn't say anything or indicate anything where she was very stressed and, you know, went to trauma. We lived in a 20 by 24 room, and the only thing separating us between, well, was my father hung a blanket in the middle of the room, and I would go to try to sleep at night, and my mother and father used to talk almost every night. Mm. I still remember my father saying, we're United States citizens, we're going to be out of here in 6 months. Because when a country is at war, they need farmers to grow the food, not knowing why we got, one of the reasons why we got put in. Okay? And also, during the first year into the lake, the government offered to let us, the family, out to go farm. You know where? North Dakota.
North Dakota.
Father said, North Dakota.
Yeah.
He said, if you're going to send us there, we need to be subsidized. The government said 1 year. My father said, no, 2 years, because I cannot learn the land in 1 year. Government said no, so my father said no.
You know, there were three things that were actually, it was spoken, but also practiced by my parents. And that was, you know, we knew that always do the very best you can. Always be honest, and always give back to the community. Seems like those are kind of like the three family precepts or something, you know, that we grew up with. And which I'm kind of grateful for. It wasn't like always make A's or anything, but always do the very best you can.
My father was not a communicator. I'm a Murakami man. I never say I love you to the family.
Oh.
I hug and kiss and tell everybody else how much I like them. For family, I didn't do that.
Oh.
And so then at the family gathering, I told them that, you see, my father was the same way. My grandfather was the same way. My father never said, I love you, or anything like that that I could remember in my lifetime. but I know that his actions showed, when I really think about it, his actions showed how much he cared about us. So that's why when the war started, he wanted the family to be together, and we moved up to Florida. So when we came back from camp, my father never said anything about camp once. And in the family, we never did really discuss it.
The one thing I remember about my mom is that after the war, she all of a sudden, she remembered us getting really excited. You know, it was our first time being out in San Francisco, and leaves were falling from the trees that line California Street. And we were so excited saying, oh, autumn leaves, you know, picking up these, she was saying, these awful looking brown leaves. But as children, this is the first time we saw autumn leaves. And she thought, oh my gosh, the kids really, you know, there's a void here. They lost out a part of their lives. So with that, she decided that she would try to make up all of the lost experiences of being in the camps, being isolated, you know, for us. And so, my gosh, she took us to every parade, every new exhibition that was there, to the art museums, to the zoo, to everywhere. I mean, you know, when the Freedom Train came by to the Bay Area, she really had us all packed up to go through and experience that. So she did her might to really give us back what experiences we didn't have because we were in camp. And then one time, this was one of the first Veterans Day parades in San Francisco that she took us. And we were there standing on the sidewalk while the parade was coming. And this man, this Caucasian man, came and yelled at my mother saying, you know, the Jap word, and, you know, get out of here, you're the enemy, and all of that. And my mom stood up to him and saying, you know, no, I'm an American, and my children are American, and we have the right to be here to celebrate Veterans Day, you know? And that was, to me, amazing, because I think that was one of the first times I saw her stand up. That, you know, in the founding days of the museum, you know, nobody really, I mean, this is something I think we need to document, are the founders and the ideas that they brought to the table. I mean, it's when you really think about because they were the older Nisei generation. And when you think about, they're the ones that came back and started the Little Tokyo, becoming, you know, bringing that together, bringing the community together, and some of the activities and all that. And so it really, for me, it was just a real privilege to sit among them and listen to how they thought. And it was very quick that it was obvious there were those who were thinking in building a building, and then people like me saying, hey, it doesn't matter if you had a building or not, unless you got some programming going on. And so, you know, have to be the program chairman, right? But then you have a program committee, and a lot of the discussion going on. What is this museum? And it is going to be a national museum. So what does that mean to be a national museum? You know, we knew that there were voices still that we needed to capture through the camp experience and all. But we also knew that ultimately there was going to be a collective thing that needed to happen. Because it isn't just, because unfortunately we all being people, you know, we all being human beings, sometimes it was the feeling like my camp was worse than your camp. So therefore I suffered more kind of attitude that was coming out, or my camp was better than your camp kind of thing. It was just really an odd thing that was kind of cropping up. And we were hearing this. So we said, you know, into the future, you really got to think in terms that it is all of our collective experience, because that's what our children are going to end up understanding, not so much our individual kind of experience. So that's when we start to think about that and having the first all camp summit. And that was in 2002. We got a visit one day. Irene called me and said, Nancy, come on down to the collections at such and such time, because we're going to have a visitor from Arkansas. You know, Ruby Takanishi is bringing the head of the Winthrop Rockefeller Foundation. That's when I first met the wonderful Sybil Jordan Hampton. Ruby had sent her a thank you card or something on a card that our museum had produced the season before, showing that those, the mural, and you know, and as note cards, we were selling that. And apparently she used that as a thank you note. And that's the first time that Sybil knew about that there was anything to do with the camps in the state of Arkansas. So she needed to come, because to her, this was just kind of like horrendous, you know, like how come she didn't know about this? And that started the relationship and the idea that she wanted to do a conference, because for her, this whole experience would, for our Arkansans, show that, you know, this kind of prejudice is, and is not just a black and white issue.
The volunteers, I don't know how many volunteers said they wanted to go. And this included volunteer leadership. So I'm waiting for them to do something. And nothing happens. And nobody's doing anything to organize anything. You know, I just didn't understand that. So I just took it upon myself one day, and I called up Yamato and discussed that with them. And this conference is coming up. And I asked them if they were willing to put a tour together. They said, okay.
That's right.
Yeah. So
I remember now.
So then I contacted the volunteers who thought I were interested. Mm-hmm. And because I was the one that contacted her, I became the kind of the lead for the museum people. And we have museum people, we have other people that came. There were a whole busload we had. And I was surprised we had that many. But anyway, so it was it was put together by them, and they included things like, when we went to Camp Shelby, on a Monday when the museum was not open, but she got there, whoever her contacts were, got them to open up the museum for us at Camp Shelby. And we were probably one of the first people that went to the World War II Museum in New Orleans, because there was a JA guy there that was helping them put that together. They had a little section on the 442. So we went to that. We went to the Civil War grounds and all that. And it turned out to be a really good tour. And
Skip says, well, how many people do you think is going to come, Nancy? You know, for sure it's going to be 750 plus, for sure. I know it's going to be for sure 750. Because, you know, that's usually a good solid number that we've seen in all kinds of stuff. But I said, but it could go up to about 1,000. And he'd go, Well, you know, basically the Arkansas was expecting really 250 people. An outspoken person in LA just really got very angry because she could not sign up for the tour, because by this time, you know, Arkansas was taking care of all the registrations. Said, no, this art already sold up. And I said, no, you can't be saying that. This is probably the most important part regardless of the wonderful sessions we have and all. But for the people coming, the most important part is to go to the campsite. So we got to figure out a way where we get everybody, you know, to the campsite.
When I was a little girl in the 50s, I played here when there was still buildings, when they were falling down, and so I've come back too.
This is fascinating, not only from a historical point of view, because of all of the kind of strange developments that have occurred in the Delta throughout history, but also, of course, the parallels to our own time and constitutional law right now are frightening, distressing, sad.
Yeah, I had just turned 4. So I'm of an age where I had a life. I had a life before, which I remember very well. And so it had this big effect on me because I didn't know what I was doing here and what happened to my life. So it's different for everybody. Yeah, there's a whole saga involved in here.
Okay, we can go on and have a picture made right here. What is it? 62 years ago. 62 years ago. I'm now 91. Oh, wow. I knew her as Miss Wake Knight. She was my 3rd grade teacher, and this is what she looked like. Now this is our class robe. Oh, one of them. Okay. But I'm not going to give you that. That's the only one I've got. Okay, I'll make one and send it to you. Okay. Now, I did go into teaching, but it was college. She was ahead of me. No. I think elementary school teachers should get paid more than college teachers. So I've retired in Hilo, and I've invited her to come and visit me. She'll have a free apartment. Oh. Well, it was a wonderful experience.
See my Ralph, come. Mr. Ellington.
It's not a make amends or nothing like that, because you can't do it. When the water goes by the bridge, it's gone. You take what's coming. But it is a good opportunity. I've made a lot of friends. I've met a lot of folks. Been exposed to a lot of things that I've never been exposed to, that it never happened. So it is a place of historical significance.
I was 23. I just got married and I had one daughter, and she was 2 months old. She's coming. That's why I brought her. Well, that was all barracks, but now it's just bare land.
you doing? Oh, okay. That's all you know.
So far, just meeting people from all over. I was just talking to somebody from Denver, talking to someone in New York, Ann Arbor, and I said, why'd you guys come here? Same reason. It's a historical event, and we're making history here, and I think this is why we're here. Plus, a personal reason to kind of, those that was at Rohwer or at Jerome, just want to see what's happened to where they used to live.
I think it's good for us to remember this so we don't repeat the error in the future. You know, as of now, we got Arab Americans under fire for looking like Arab Americans. You know, it's not their fault. That's the way they were born. The Almighty created them that way, right? And they all came here for a reason, to have new opportunities. And I don't want to see somebody else go through this again.
He might have been one that went swimming with it. I don't know if you're familiar with that. There's a canal right yonder at that woods line.
It was a little bit out of my range. I used to live over here, and I stuck trying to.
Yeah, it don't matter where you live, because y'all could walk.
Not this boy. You didn't know how to swim.
Well, we'd go swimming over.
It wasn't deep enough to swim, no way.
Gotcha.
Thank you.
I studied American history, and remnants of World War II was there, but not this. This is news to me.
Yeah, because even during the war, we were here. I know what you guys went through. I really know what you guys.
Yeah.
Yep.
Recognize you.
I can't.
This is the building they were talking about, I think.
The auditorium.
Yeah.
My uncle helped build that.
Yeah.
See, it used to get so hot that we would make dress without waist. See, it was long torso-like.
We're going to pick cotton.
Oh, when them cotton balls get rotten, you can't pick very much cotton.
I have a scissor in the bus.
Wow.
Oh.
There you go.
Oh, thank you. You're so kind.
Now don't get stuck, because you remember these things? Look at, that's what people got chewed up with when they were picking.
Oh.
This is the last campaign in Italy. Bill Imamoto, he was our medic. And he was the first one to get killed on Mount Belvedere. And then Kishi was the second one. And we had to carry him down the mountain, 4 of us.
See how that crack in there? Before, all four sides were laid on the ground and put it back. And we've done that twice. And we were continuously begging my dad was continuously begging for money to, like, that part to fall off, and they have to prop it up and try to get someone to restore it properly.
It's been a long, interesting journey. I think this is healing for a lot of people here to come back, and it sort of brings closure for a lot of families.
one of the most important outcome, and you know, and it reached one of the early goals of the institution, the museum, was that through the really wonderful and great work that was done by Allison and her colleague from the University of Arkansas, their teacher training created a group of amazing, dedicated teachers who just took on the whole theme and all, and developed a curriculum that was so good and so adaptable that the state of Arkansas, their Department of Education, the State Department of Education, adopted the curriculum.
Yeah.
Part.
Just putting up ACC to me, because that when my free time I would walk through there and people would be there watching, looking at all of this exhibit displays and everything else. To me, was the best. And I think there were other volunteers that said the same thing that I did about the ACC exhibit was tops number one. And then after that were the students' presentations.
You know, I think one of the most important things is the leaving behind of experiences and memory. You know, I mean, and to do it from a first person voice, and to have young people or other people who haven't had that experience, you know, be there to partake the information, to interface with the people. I think that to me is one of the most important part, you know, whether like in Arkansas, whether you were part of the inmates or, you know, even remember Farmer, what was his name? Farmer John, really tall man. And so as a young kid, he would come over from his side of the fence into Jerome and became friends with some of the Japanese Americans. And he continues to be a rice farmer. And so he first showed up at the All Camp Summit, and he brought little bags of Arkansas rose rice just to give. Like even this farmer had a story to tell. And you begin to appreciate it in a bigger picture, you know? I mean, even one of our volunteers, dear Jean, she just couldn't go on the pilgrimage. Her husband and son went, but she herself, the one who was incarcerated there, could not. She could not, but she could only stay in Little Rock. You know, and just listening to why or because or whatever, you start to understand how, my gosh, this is really the emotions, you know, that this whole experience has kind of imprisoned some of us. And without sharing and talking about it, you can't get released from it, right? I mean, for some people. And for other people, it's to be there to see it, and it's a kind of a release.
Before I became a volunteer, when the Ruffashimpo had an article that said museum's going to have an exhibit on the concentration camps, they call them racial relocation camps. You know what I said? Because we never discussed it at home. I said, what the hell are they doing that for? Then I never really thought about things that, you know, about camp. But we need to tell our story. And our story, starting with the essays till now. And if we don't tell our story, nobody else is going to. And I really think the pilgrimages and everything else are very important because of my experience in going to those. And when I see all these young people come to the pilgrimages, you know, and I say, they're going to keep the stories alive.
And I think it's really important that we also be able to connect what the lessons from our story connected to what's going on today. You know, with the immigration, with the separation of the young children and their parents, you know, the incarceration of those kids. You know, you got to speak up for them.